Good morning, girls. Today's lesson will be on the use of commas, as in Unit 7 of the Cambridge Checkpoint, page 86. Now, this week we've dealt a lot with how to use commas. We dealt extensively with the use of commas in grammar. We covered it. We covered all the uses. Now we're doing it again here in this textbook. What we're doing here is not different from what we learned in grammar, but just an aspect of it. So since it's more of like a repetition or revision lesson, I would expect that after this, everyone should be very grounded in the use of commas. Now, I told you that this particular key point is dealing with just an aspect of how to use commas. If you remember, in Unit 5, I think either Unit 5 or 6, particularly page 57 of this textbook, the use of commas was introduced for the first time. On that page, they only dealt with two kinds of commas. Okay, how to use commas in two different ways. Here, they're discussing the third way. All right. Okay, now on that page, it talked about how to use commas to separate items in a list, and these items in a list can be words or phrases. The second use they talked about on that page was how to use them to join sentences with connectives. We know what sentence connectives are. How to use commas to join independent sentences with a sentence connective. Now, here they're talking about the third use of commas. Now, using commas in pairs. The first two type I just talked about as in page 57 or as on page 57 of this textbook. In those situations, we're talking about how to use commas singularly. In other words, using one comma to separate between items at a time. But here, they're referring to using commas in pairs so that we're no longer considering the commas singularly, but we're considering two at a time, the use of two at a time. Now, when you talk about using commas in pairs, two commas at a time, think of it as using it to guard between a group of words. Could be phrases, could be clauses, okay? For example, I want to introduce extra information into a sentence using a relative clause or phrase. I use commas to guard them, okay, on both sides. Now, see what I did here. You can do this too, so that it helps you distinguish between them. I put bracketing commas here. So the pairs, two at a time, the pair of commas acting as a bracket around extra information being introduced into a sentence, be it a relative clause or phrase, all right? So think of the use of commas in this way. The first one, separating items in a list. The second one, joining independent sentences. And the third one, acting as brackets around extra information introduced into a sentence about a person, a thing, a noun, a subject. All right. So let's now carefully consider what is written in the key point.